Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fourth installment of Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Just glad to be back for the second week of our show. The first week went by all right. We had a bit of issues with echoing and things like that. So I went ahead and I put up a few blankets around here. Not sure if it'll help or not, but hey, I mean, if it sounds better, it sounds better. You know, I sure as hell aren't going to listen to myself talk for more than 5 seconds to see if it sounds better. So ultimately, it would be very helpful to get some feedback from you, the ladies and gentlemen at home viewing and hopefully enjoying the show. So what we're going to go ahead and do today is, last week we talked about gardening, backyard hens, and bicycling. So I'm not sure if I tackled the issues or not, and like I said before, I'm not going to listen to any of the shows, so I'm not really 100% sure either. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover a few items that I think I may have missed from the past week. And the first one that I wanted to get into was bicycling. See, if you're going to bike a very, very long distances, say over 20 miles consistently, and you have very efficient and nice shoulders to bike on and everything, what you can do is you can get these bikes. They're really low to the ground. They're basically recumbent bikes. You know, you sit on them. One of the disadvantages of them though is that you can't, when you're sitting down, like literally sitting down with your back rested against a seat or something, as opposed to a normal bike where you're kind of standing on the pedal. I mean, technically you are sitting on the seat, but you're more or less standing on the pedals on a normal bike. So with a recumbent bike, you know, you're sitting down, you don't have as much, you can't really extract as much of that, the power in the back of your legs to pedal the bike. So that there is that inherent physics disadvantage as it pertains to recumbent bikes. But the main resistor when you're biking is the air resistance, which increases by a factor of you know, it's a squared root, or it's, as you, say for example, you're biking 20 miles per hour and then you bike 40 miles per hour. There's going to be 4 times the air resistance there. So it's a factor of 2, the faster you get, or the faster you're biking or whatever. As far as rolling resistance and chain resistance, that's really not a, yeah, you lose power. You can obviously tell you lose power too with rolling resistance when you're biking on gravel, and then when you switch over to tar, because tar is just super smooth. The bike just keeps going straight. You don't have to deal with all the gravel and rocks kicking up and all the inherent, you know, friction caused by all the vibration through the gravel. So obviously rolling resistance is an issue, and chain resistance is an issue too. If you never oil your chain and then you oil the chain once, you'll obviously see the difference. But you know, that's no excuse that you need to spend hundreds of dollars on some top-rated synthetic racing chain lube or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure just that even cooking oil might work too. You know, just don't dump it on yourself. Then people probably won't really want to go biking with you, or you won't be part of their biking team. They certainly won't want to draft behind you, that's for sure. Which might actually be good, because then you could probably be on the tail end of the draft for most of the time. Then you save a lot of energy. But getting back to it, yeah, lube the chain, rolling resistance, and you know, if you got those big fat bike tires and then you go to the super skinny ones too, you can definitely feel a difference as well. So rolling resistance is an issue, but it's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is wind resistance. So when you want to bike, say 40-mile round trip to and from work, you know, you got these nice big beautiful shoulders, it's country roads, nobody's going to bother you, the traffic is light based on the times you got to go to work, and then you want to be physically fit. It's you live in a part of the country where it's well, even in Minnesota, I mean, you can still get 7 good months, 8 good months out of the year biking to and from work. So what you can do is you can get these recumbent bikes that are really low to the ground. Some of them have 3 wheels, which technically would make them a tricycle. You can try them out. I mean, I've never been on one of them before. Some of them, they got 2 of the back wheels are actually angled, which it looks like the people that get them aren't too excited about them, or they just based on the bearing angle and everything, the premature bearing wear out and just has weird, the tire wear is weird. You got to rotate tires. Yeah, when you got angle tire, when people try to do goofy stuff like that, it just inevitably, you're going to have weird, annoying problems. And if you're ready for them, it's no big deal, but if you're not ready for them, then it might piss you off here and there. So ultimately, you can get the two-wheel recumbent bike or the little tricycle ones too. And then here's the biggest issue. They probably sell these from the factory with the shell over the top of them, fiberglass, carbon fiber shell, whatever the case may be, maybe even tin, steel, light steel obviously. So the shell is just designed to go. There's two kinds that would be available. You could either put a shell that encapsulates your entire body, at which point you would need to cut some slots for windows in front of you and behind you. You might need a mirror on the side like regular cars with the rearview mirror so that you can see behind you if there's people biking. Chances are pretty good though there's not going to be anybody behind you, because if you do have one of those aerodynamic shells, you really pick up a lot of speed and yeah, it's not going to be very many people that can keep up with you. So if you can get the one that fully encapsulates you, and you got to get windows, and you probably got to get a door and things like that. But fortunately, if it rains too, you're not going to get wet, which is one advantage of those types of bikes too. And the other kind is you want to have it shaped like a raindrop too. Smooth in the front, sort of a circular in the front, and then it comes to a point. That's the most efficient means of aerodynamics. And like as far as automobiles, if you were to look at the Honda Insight, is a car made in 2000, 2006. Talking about the old Honda Insights with the two doors. Those cars were more or less made with a two-drop design. That's why when you see them, they got these back wheels and they got covers over the top of them, because the back of the car converges. Now it can't converge completely to a point, because then you wouldn't have a back window, you wouldn't be able to see out of it, you wouldn't be able to put lights out of it, it would be dangerous, it wouldn't meet safety regulations. So it converges as much as it possibly can with the compromise as far as safety goes. And then, so you got the fully encapsulated one. There's also another kind you can make, which is, say, Indy cars, for example. They have the driver's head is sticking out, and then the body just goes around it. So that one's probably a lot easier, because you wouldn't need doors, you wouldn't need windows, and then as the operator of the bicycle, you can see around you quite easily. So that's probably a lot easier to make too. So you just make the teardrop, and then you stick it on the bike, and then however you affix it to the frame or whatever, so long as it's sturdy and everything, and it doesn't shake around or shake, rattle, and roll and cause the bike to get all out of whack and balance. Because I mean, it needs to be very sturdy, because if you're going 30, 40 miles per hour on a consistent basis, which is very possible with those kind of bikes. Like with a regular pedal bike, I mean, if you're going 20 miles per hour, you're really moving pretty fast. 30 miles per hour is probably the maximum speed that the average American has ever gone on a bicycle. So I remember back in the good old days, we would go down, you had a hill right in the middle of town, and then as soon as you got that speedometer for your bike, you kind of biked around, played around with it, and then one day you decided, hey, let's max out our speed here. So you try to go into this downhill ascent, going as fast, downhill descent, as fast as you possibly could, and then by the end of it, if you're going over 30 miles per hour, that would be a high achievement there. And that 30 miles per hour when you're on a bike, it is very concerning, because you realize how not really how fragile it is, but it's just you out in the open, and if you wipe out or something, you're probably going to get significantly injured at those speeds and velocities. And for the most part, the bearings aren't really made for top speeds, and the tires may not be up to spec. Maybe they got flat spots, or they got rocks and pebbles in them and all this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, if you're going to make these recumbent bikes that are going to go 30, 40 miles per hour, I mean, you got to get the top rated tires, you got to get a chain that's not going to snap in half and fly into your face or anything. You got to get the shell has to be firmly affixed to the frame. The frame has to be able to handle not only your weight, but the additional weight of the shell, and there probably won't be much downforce, so you don't have to worry too much about about that. But for the most part, you have to keep durability in mind. You can't just flop together some flimsy shell and stick it on there and hope that it'll work, because when you're going at very, very high speeds like that, everything is just magnified. The difference between 20 and 40 miles per hour is 4 times the force of air. But I mean, yeah, for long-term travels, that'd be a really cool thing. Then you get to be outside. You get to spend a lot of time biking around outside. You get to be physically fit, save a lot of money in gas and fuel, and yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about with your friends and family and stuff. There is one. Well, I was going to say there is one significant downside, because you won't be able to listen to Good Times, Balls Deep, or Tex Messages on your AM or FM radio. However, you probably could have, some type of speaker system inside the bike, powered by a little 12-volt battery or something like that. And that's another thing too. I don't know if any of these recumbent bikes are sold with the electric motors or hybrid motors attached to them, but I'm sure there's probably some companies out there that do sell them. So you can also get that as an option too. I mean, someday you might be going into a 30-mile-per-hour headwind. So I mean, if you're biking 20 miles in a 30-mile-per-hour headwind, it'll take a very long time to get home, and it'll be a very unpleasant experience too. So confronted with those issues, it would be nice to have some supplemental power, but I mean, obviously you don't need it. It's like, that's the thing with making these fancy exotic setups. It's you do have to design for the fringes, but for the most part, you don't design for the fringe, but don't dread the fringe. I mean, it's gonna happen. That's just life in general. Bad things happen. If you drive a car your whole life, you're gonna get into an accident someday. It's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when. Now, obviously, yeah, there are exceptions out there. Some people have probably made it their entire lives, never touched a fender or anything like that. So I mean, of course, there's always exceptions to that rule. But for the most part, with biking, you can always check weather forecasts too. I mean, weather forecasts are very accurate. Like 7-day weather forecasts. I mean, nowadays they made so many advances in Doppler and meteorological readings and pressure and that yeah, you could easily check the weather 2-3 days ahead of time and determine, hey, this day looks like it might be bad. It's going to be a low pressure. There's going to be some clouds moving in. Maybe a tsunami or an earthquake or a tugboat will get shored up on land, and then it won't, just not a good idea to bike around that day. So just pop in the car or pickup or helicopter and then head to work using that method, because it's always good to have a backup plan. That's for sure. So ultimately, you could probably get those carbon fiber bikes too, where you're standing up on the pedals, if you're really into biking. But it's just, I always thought it'd be cool to try out the recumbent bike that had the shell on it. And as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, there were these guys. I don't know where they were from. Maybe it was somewhere in Europe. But they had those recumbent bikes that were really low to the ground, and they had the shell over the top of it. And then it was built so that their head was sticking out the top, so they could, just wear a helmet and then get all the aerodynamic advantage too. And you could, some helmets are designed to be aerodynamic, but I don't really know if that's safe or not, because it seems that if you got some big point sticking out of the back of your helmet and you're rolling around on the ground and that point catches the ground and spins your neck and snaps your vertebrae, that's probably not an ideal safety measure to have with a helmet. So probably just the rounded helmet is good enough. You don't need to get cute, funny, fresh with any of that stuff. Just stick the shell on, sit down, strap in, take your little human growth hormone shots or your blood doping or the anabolic steroids or whatever these Lance Armstrong guys, whatever those guys use, and then just go bike to and from work, save a lot of money, and have a good time, be outside, be healthy, enjoy the great outdoors, enjoy the healthy oxygen and everything that comes from just being outside. Or you could just sit inside your car and breathe in all the plastic, toxic, petroleum-based fumes from the upholstery, and then if your car burns oil or anything like that, then you got to deal with that fumes as well. That's totally up to you, though. You obviously can make up your own mind. So we're going to have to go to break pretty soon here. But before we do, I want to make sure to plug for a future show we have. It's called Good Times, Balls Deep. The host is currently testing out some different types of sound editing material. I mean, he obviously has a more elaborate setup than just a few blankets tossed around. That's more or less the flagship show. So it's a show that we want to put a lot of time and dedication into and make sure everything is... I mean, this show is just half-assed, basically. It's mostly just to shoot it as promo for Good Times, Balls Deep. Because once Good Times, Balls Deep picks up and, it might even be a top-rated YouTube show at some point. So we're really excited about it. He's really excited about it. He's testing out these sound editing designs because when we hit the ground with that show, we want to hit it running right away and make sure we're on 8 cylinders. There's not going to be much margin for experience. I mean, yeah, it will be an evolving, dynamically changing show, but ultimately we want to make sure that it's top quality right away, right off the bat. I mean, text messages, it's not a big deal. Everything is just kind of half-hearted, just having a good time, just putting out the word for Good Times, Balls Deep. That's mainly the idea behind it. So yeah, once he nails down the right sound editing material, once we get a assembly of gentlemen that want to get involved and get involved with the discussion panel, yeah, once those details are ironed out, I mean, the show is just going to be absolute pedal to the metal. And as far as when it's going to air, we haven't really determined that just yet. But I mean, there's so much to consider. We got a massive checklist of probably a couple hundred items, and I mean, there's probably a few dozen that are checked off already, but I mean, there's still a lot more. And that's not to say that the show isn't going to happen for months or even years. It should. I mean, it's right around the corner. We might just decide to start just shooting 10, 5, 15-minute preview promos or something along that line. But yeah, we'll see. It's very dynamic. Just stay tuned. I don't think you guys will be disappointed. In 3 minutes, text messages, Rick Tex. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Tex Messages. I'm Rick Tex, the parasite of the show. Glad to be back here with you on this evening here on March 13th, 2018. Looks like we got a fairly sunny day out. It's at 40 degrees. Looks like the hens are on the prowl for some spare blotches of grass. See, they got this interesting setup. There's three of them. Two of them will forage for the food. One of them acts as a lookout. So if there's any danger in the vicinity, the golden hen, she's got her eye out for any aerial predators, ground predators, land predators, sea predators, you name it. She's the lookout for it. So as soon as they're spotted, she'll alert the others, and then they'll tear off probably back into their coop or into some kind of hidden, concealed area or whatever. And then even this morning, there's a feral cat that likes to hang out here. He was climbing around in the tree, chasing after sparrows, whatever those cats do. And yeah, it's just a nice day. It looks like spring should be coming in the very near future. I think spring officially is April or something like that, which is also the opening of the Princeton Speedway. And I'm not sure the exact date is, but usually it's the Friday of late April sometime around April 20th. So I know it's not April 23rd of this year, but it'll be probably around April 20th, 7 p.m. Princeton Speedway. Friday nights, always a good time. Alright, now, I was reminded by the producers that we have to do the daily, I guess it's probably the mitigation for the daily dumb down. Hey, one moment please. Hello, this is Rick Tex. I'm sorry, I'm certainly not interested in that at this time, but thank you very much for calling and for considering me as a viable candidate for your product. I appreciate it a lot. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and if at some point in the future you'd like to check out a podcast, you can tune into Good Times Balls Deep. As far as the date of the show, we haven't yet planned when we're going to have the show, but it should be in the very near future, so just stay tuned to that. And thank you very much for calling. I appreciate it a lot. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. That was sounded like a telemarketer. They wanted to sell me on some trip to Costa Rica, but ultimately doing the show here and taking care of hens and everything, you don't really have time for travel. Especially, it costs a lot of money too. It's like going to Costa Rica. I'd probably be a few $1,000s, and it's like, what do you do when you get there? You're just gonna stand around and stare at the beach or drink alcohol or hang out in some bad parts of town and hope you don't get mugged. So I mean, ultimately traveling is it's not really something that I would intend to do. It would be unfair to listeners too if I would just not have the show on for just because I wanted to go dick around in some random country for no apparent reason. If there's some important filming to do, or if we have a special report, yeah, we might send some reporters out to Puerto Rico, Haiti. We might even go so far as Wisconsin to occasionally film a special. Maybe I'll film a special report at a racetrack or do some personal announcing or something like that. Cedar Lake Speedway, Red Cedar. Yeah, who knows? The possibilities are endless. But yeah, sorry about that moderate delay here. We're gonna have to. Okay, so we got a segment. It's mitigating the dumbing down of. So I guess you could call it the daily smartening up. For example, basically the producers provide me with some research here, or they go to colleges or they pull articles online, and then they say some helpful information. So today we have Imperial College in London. What they did is they studied salt intake, and they found out that it directly correlates with high blood pressure, and a healthy diet is not able to rectify this issue. So one of the things that confuses me about salt intake is that salt is many different compounds. most of the salt that we associate with is sodium, because sodium is oftentimes used in the preservation of our foods. It helps to control bacteria growth or fungal or just bad products, and plus it acts as a dehydrator too. So when it dehydrates and there's no moisture, then you're not going to have the growth of all those dangerous objects for human consumption. So that's why when you eat a lot of preserved foods or food that sits on the shelf and that is not refrigerated or not frozen, it does have a lot of sodium in it. So when these articles here refer to salt, it's mostly sodium. I mean, salt could be it could be potassium chloride or sodium chloride. Just those two columns on the periodic table, a halogen and then whatever the first one is, whatever sodium is called. So it's basically just a compound of those two items. And not only is keeping track of your salt intake important, but you also, it works with your potassium too. So if you're eating just a complete deluge of sodium and you're not getting any potassium, then your sodium is just going to be expelled from your body because there has to be a fairly consistent ratio. I mean, it works with your brain and sending signals and all that. The brain synapses use the potassium and sodium for, it's basically, I mean, you could maybe call it blood for your brain, but I mean, obviously the blood goes to your brain too, so it's in a conductor of some kind, a superconductor, the sodium and potassium. So that's why people try to keep the balance between the both of them. And it's very difficult to do nowadays because, say for example, a can of soup has, if you look at a can of soup, you eat the whole thing. I mean, soup has meat and vegetables and all those other perishable food items in it, which is why it's required to have a lot of sodium in there to make sure it doesn't perish, basically, and become sick and dangerous for you after just a few months. And potassium is contained in a lot of fruits, vegetables. Like bananas is probably the biggest source of potassium. And then you got avocados, tomatoes, things like that too. Potassium is very important too for your motor neural pathways. If you're not eating a lot of potassium, then you might lose strength, or you might be fatigued. And like for example, this is a good example that I like to use. When you're walking around outside and it's really cold out and you come inside and you try to play a handheld video game, so you can't even move your fingers because your hands are so cold that there's no blood, or the pathways just aren't working there anymore. So when you starve yourself of vital nutrients like the potassium, or maybe if you eat way too much potassium, you don't eat any sodium, same effect. But in the typical American diet, that's probably almost completely unheard of to have an excess of potassium relative to sodium. So keeping them in balance allows your pathways to work properly, and then you get most of your strength and everything too. I mean, weightlifting, for example, when you improve your lifts when you initially weightlift, it's mostly because your neural pathways are becoming more efficient. They're efficiently firing better. They're reactivating the pathways that you didn't use for a while. I mean, if you haven't done a squat in 5 years and then you start squatting for a couple months, all those pathways are going to get rejuvenated. They're going to get regenerated and start working again and making you great again and allowing the strength. Not only does it stimulate the nerves to get all the blood flow back there and start building the muscle again, it stimulates the present behavior and action so that you can use the muscles right away. And then there's another thing too with salt intake. When you eat too much of it, it sort of dehydrates you, and then you need to drink plenty of clean, freshly sourced water. That's not to say you drink the chlorinated and fluorinated water and the water with the fecal matter and everything like that. You want to get preferably rainwater if you can. And when you can buy water from the store too, but that comes in like those plastic BPA bottles or whatever that probably got all the estrogen mimickers and just very bad stuff for you. So usually what I would do is I would get those glass pickle jars or even apple juice jars, and in wintertime just go outside, the pickle jar works better because it's got a thicker neck, so you can just stuff more snow in there and then just stick it in your clean snow. Obviously, if you walked around in the snow and you tracked dirt and everything in it, you're not going to want to use that snow. Just find a nice patch of clean snow, stuff a jar in there, stuff it in the jar, stick the jar in the fridge, and not only will it help to cool your fridge, once it turns from a solid to a liquid, then it's drinkable, and it's a very healthy source. It has all the nutrients from the cloud and the earth and the heavens and the skies above, and you'll feel better. It'll be, I guess it'll be like alkaline water, whatever it's called, or vitamin water, mineral water. All those fancy waters on the shelf. I mean, the rainwater's going to have all that. And plus, you don't need to filter too, because it's already filtered by the big guy above, or Mother Nature, whoever knows how to filter stuff significantly better than humans would. So clean water is when you drink the dirty water. With basically when they say chlorine in the water, it's basically bleach. But I think they don't want to call it bleach, because if people knew that their city water had bleach in it, it would sound really bad. Because chlorine is basically the active ingredient in bleach. If you look at a bottle of bleach at home, it'll say chlorine on it. Sodium chlorine or whatever, potassium chlorine, something like that. So the city water basically has chlorine and bleach in it. I mean, it's good for getting rid of dangerous bacteria that could make you instantly sick and very sick. It's more of a slow death type thing, it just slowly accumulates. Like, it accumulates a lot in your thyroid, which is in your neck. And your thyroid regulates all the hormones in your body. The hormones in your body are what pulsate through your blood and then communicate with different organs to tell it to do things. Like, for example, testosterone. That would go to all your muscles and tell them to grow bigger, or go to your hair and tell your hair to fall out, or it goes to your libido or whatever, things like that. And there's different hormones too that regulate your heart rate, regulate your body temperature. That's probably the biggest one, because if you go to a doctor and they say you have a thyroid deficiency, it'll be, are your feet and hands cold, or skin is yellowing, maybe you're fatigued, or you're phlegmatic. They'll ask you all those questions, and if you are at some point diagnosed with a thyroid deficiency, hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, you're probably going to want to get iodine. And yeah, in a lot of these salt intakes here, they do have potassium iodide as a they add it to it. It's fortified with potassium iodide. And what I've heard though is that the potassium iodide, it's not really as readily available as nascent sources of iodine, or embryonic. What nascent basically means is in its initial stages, not fully formed, immature. It's most of the nascent iodines are deep earth sourced. Like natural gas drilling companies, they get really deep into the earth, and then that's where the pure iodine is. Another good source of iodine is seaweed. You can pretty much go to any retail store like Target and Walmart, and there'll be these dried packages of this little green flaky seaweed, and they look like really, really thin potato chips, and they may or may not say it on the package, but they should contain a lot of iodine, good iodine, available iodine, not bonded with the potassium. And you can get nascent iodine supplements too. Global Healing Center has some. They come in this little jar, and then it's a liquid. Then I don't know what they're called, but it's got a little rubber suction thing, and then you suck out a little bit, and then you put like 2 or 3 drops on your tongue, and that's pretty much that. One way to test for iodine deficiency is a patch. It's not 100% reliable or whatever, but you stick the patch on your arm, and then based on how quickly your skin sucks up the iodine, will tell you whether you were deficient or not. And yeah, there's probably, if you get the test kit and read the package, there's probably some directions on there. If your skin is still yellow after 5 minutes, then you have plenty of iodine, or if your skin is instantly dry after a minute, then maybe you're iodine deficient. So iodine is one of them things that's very important to have. And you may be thinking of nuclear fallout or radiation when you take the iodine supplements, because when you have nuclear, if you have a nuclear explosion or a blast, you're going to get all these radioactive iodine. So you want to make sure that you have the non-active iodines on your, your thyroid receptors, because what your thyroid receptors does is it looks for and identifies halogens: chlorine, fluorine, bromine, iodine. And when you eat and consume way too much of the other halogens like chlorine, fluorine, and bromine, your thyroid will get crusted up with that, and all your receptors will have those, and then they won't have any of the iodine. But what happens when you do take the good iodine is that it kicks off all those other bad halogens. But if you're not taking any of them, then you're not getting the right iodine on your receptors to properly fuel and allow the thyroid to work properly. Think of it this way. The thyroid wants the iodine to function properly. It's basically putting the proper gasoline in your car. I mean, if you dump alcohol or water or something like that in your car, I mean, it's still going to run, and it's probably going to sputter and all that other stuff too, but it's going to operate. But ultimately you want to displace all the bad stuff with the good stuff. So you want just a regular gasoline. And that's the same way your thyroid works too. It just wants the receptor, it just wants the iodine on its receptors. But the problems we face is a lot of the breads we eat too, that has bromine in it. Sodium bromine, I think, is what they use for some kind of bread preservative. Bread is a weird thing. If you look at the ingredient list on a bread, just a regular loaf of bread, it looks very innocuous, very simple, but the ingredient list is about hundreds of items long. And there's ingredients on there that they're not even legally obligated to list too. I don't know if it's because they're under a certain weight, or it's classified as some thing that humans don't absorb, so they don't need to put it on the list or something along those lines. But ultimately, yeah, pay attention to your chlorine, fluorine, and bromine intakes, because those are definitely not what your thyroid is looking for. But it does have receptors for those particular halogens. I mean, it has receptors for halogens, and it will pick up those halogens if they don't have the iodine in there already. And like I said before, a few good sources of iodine is kelp. And then there's kelp, seaweed, and then deep earth source, the supplemental ones that you can get at Global Healing Center. And then there's other sources too, like, organic strawberries preferably grown within your own soil, or soil that you're well aware that has the proper minerals within the soil to uptake the iodine. So if you're getting stuff from a dirty, conventional, completely adulterated soil, it's probably not going to have any of the iodine in it. It's just going to be, it'll look like a strawberry, but then it'll probably be full of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers and all that too. So that's definitely something that you absolutely do want to avoid, because it's, number one, it's going to introduce a lot of bad things in your system. It'll probably kill off half of your gut microbiome, and then it won't have any of the healthy stuff either. So when I say these certain food items likely have iodine, it means get the cleanest, most local sources that you have the most control over. So potatoes, for example, that's another excellent source. Well, like I said, your own potatoes grown in your ground, your sweet potatoes, whatever, that would be a lot more preferable than some random sack of potatoes from Idaho that cost $1 per 20 pounds. I mean, yeah, they look like potatoes, they may taste like potatoes, but ultimately you're just putting empty calories into your body. So, yeah, the cost is cheaper, the initial upfront cost is cheaper, but long term you will be paying, and based on the cost of healthcare, you'll be definitely paying a lot. Or you can just get other taxpayers to pay too. That may be a viable option as well. A couple more sources for food. The yogurt, this is cows that are pasture raised, cows that are eating straight from the ground, not cows that are fed corn and soybean feed and hay that's been walked on and crafted and everything. Cranberries, beans, cheese, all the other great sources of iodine. And like I said, as long as they're from locally based, organic, and all that good fun stuff. Okay, so ran a little over on that last segment there, but we're going to have to go to break. Good Times, Balls Deep is going to be coming up in the very near future. Working on a lot of the sound editing material, and maybe trying to procure some guests, whether they're going to be long-term guests, maybe it'll be, one guy might come on for 1 month, or a guy might come on every other week, or the same person every week, or whatever the case may be. So I mean, we're definitely figuring out just things like that too. Well, what topics to cover, all that good fun stuff. But it should be coming in the very near future. You're listening to Tex Messages with Rick Tex. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. Welcome back to Tex Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Glad to have you with us this evening. So yesterday, 2 days ago, the NASCAR race occurred in Phoenix. And probably nobody's surprised Kevin Harvick was victorious and Kyle Busch was second. Basically about the only two guys in NASCAR that are not afraid of winning, or not afraid of, maintaining the pressures of winning, and just dealing with all the trials and tribulations that come with those expectations. But it's kind of funny because the week before they penalized Kevin Harvick's team because a window brace failed, so the back window bowed in a little bit on one side. And there's pictures of it on Twitter. The car passed pre and post race inspection, but when those pictures were posted, NASCAR got wind of it and then decided to penalize the team. And they interviewed Kevin Harvick prior to the race at Phoenix this past Sunday. He's kind of laughing and smiling and smirking about it. He's saying, I probably got as many fine as everybody else in this garage combined just for doing dumb stuff or just misinterpretation of the rule, or, it's the he said, she said type of thing. And but he had kind of a smirk on his face, like, I don't want to say that the window blowing in may have been a decoy to what they're really doing, but it leads me to believe that his team is probably up to some kind of chicanery, and then maybe they thought that using those other distractions would decoy away from what they're really doing. But ultimately, he is a very talented guy that likes winning, just like the host of Good Times Balls Deep. When you meet people like that in your life that just enjoy winning and they can handle the pressure, they can take the heat, those are the type of people that you want to be around, and those are the type of people that you want to be as well. If you find yourself afraid of winning, possibly you want a different career path. If you're at work all day and you're stressed out and you hate yourself and you hate your country and everything, it's hard to win. Like the president said, if you don't love your job, you're not going to be good at it. Even if you have all the natural talent in the world, you're still not going to be good at it. But speaking of winning, prior to deciding to go ahead with the planning and ultimately the ardent arrival of Good Times Balls Deep, and of course Tex Messages here, we consulted with a friend we had, and see, our friend was in central Minnesota. He was the cameraman for a very, very popular show, probably one of the all-time top-rated shows on the public access channel in central Minnesota. It would air in St. Cloud, Paynesville, Coast, all those local networks. But see, their plan was to probably just run the show for 5 years, and then they were hoping somebody else would kind of take it over, because it was just a lot of responsibility, and the show was just top-notch. It looked like a show that would be on national primetime television, and in all actuality, they probably did get a lot of offers from national and international contracts or contractors to be part of their show. But the problem with that is that they wanted to hold to a high moral standard, so they didn't really want to. See, those contracts involve some stipulations here and there, but they were just interested in being good, morally upstanding, hardworking people. So the principle, their show basically involved. It involved a lot of Bible discussion, and me personally, I didn't really know anything about the Bible prior to watching that show. So when that show would come on at 3, it would come on at 3 in the morning, because what they would do at the public access channel is they would obviously play it during prime time because it was consistently the highest rated show, and it probably, it's hard to accurately know what the exact ratings were for public access, but if somebody had to predict and estimate, it would probably be higher than the national shows, CNN, CBS at that time. So what they would do is they would play it during prime time, obviously, and then overnight they would replay it too. So when I was sitting in my parents' basement on AOL Instant Messenger playing Romance of the Three Kingdoms or playing Sega Genesis or whatever, anytime that show would come on, I'd just stop what I was doing and then just focus on the show. Because it was educational, it was informational, it was entertainment, it was just a great show. The production of it was excellent. And our friend, he was the cameraman too, so he was involved with a lot of the production and the scheduling of the show. So when the host of Good Times Balls Deep and I, we sort of consulted with him on should we go ahead and just do this podcast. He encouraged it. He thought that it was a great idea, that we should just hit the ground running. So to get that blessing from him, just basically supercharged our intentions of what direction we wanted to go as far as shows go and everything. But going back to his show though, one of the problems that he faced, and they probably anticipated it too, is just anytime he would go out into public, he was just constantly accosted. So if he would go to Crossroads Mall, if he was going to go to Burger King if you plan to go to Burger King for 20 minutes and then leave and go home and go back to your family or film another show, it was probably a multi-hour endeavor for him, just because people recognized him. They wanted to pat him on the back, get his autograph, talk about his show, the topics on the show, just get a first-hand account of how brilliant of a man he actually was. I mean, this guy, you could probably take a Bible and then just open it up and then show him the pages on each side, and he would be able to know what section you're in, most likely what the topic was. Because he'd say, oh, you're probably in about section Mark, and then this is most likely what they're talking about. This is a multi-thousand page book too. I mean, this guy knew it inside and out. And he was able to parlay all that knowledge into the show too, and make it an entertaining and captivating show. The show was just next. It might have been ahead of its time, because this was early 2000 to late 2000. So really, online podcasting was basically in its embryonic stages. So, but they did broadcast. I mean, they obviously did broadcast on public access, and it was the highest rated show and all that, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the show was probably ahead. I think if it filmed nowadays and it was placed on YouTube or Daily Motion, it'd probably get a few 100,000 views at least. And yeah, ultimately that's just kind of how our world works. The most talented, skilled people are generally people that you know in your neighborhood, amongst your friends and families. It's not. I mean, you can watch TV and get glorified by the celebrity and the fame and fortune and everything, but some of the most skilled people are just people you hang out with. I mean, back in the good old days when I was on the swim team, we were going to come up with some logo for the swim team. And this one guy came in, he drew up, I don't even remember what the logo was. And I just looked at him, I was like, man, you drew this? I mean, this is incredible. I mean, if you had like some 3D printing machine that drew to the nearest thousandth of a square inch, I don't even think it could draw anything that would look this realistic or that would bring this vivid imagery to reality. And just the fact that guy just had the skill and the talent to draw that completely blew me away, because you see all this art in studios and everything too, and it's like that guy just, what he drew was completely blew that out of the water. So I was completely fascinated by that skill. And then of course too, and then the public access channel, I pretty much, I guess you could technically say I watched the show religiously, but anytime it would come on 2 or 3 in the, that's usually when I'd be watching TV, at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's not, that's only when the show, because I mean, yeah, the show came on in prime time, like I've already said before, but they would rerun it overnight because there wasn't really any other good shows on too. I mean, even the reruns probably outrated anything else they could have on during prime time. So that's probably why they just reran the show. And then it provided the people, insomniacs like me, with the opportunity to actually watch the show. It probably was who their target audience was for. Sort of not really troubled or misguided younger people, but people that should have probably been exposed to a message of positivity. Because if you watch overnight television now, it's probably mostly violent stuff, and the rules are a little relaxed because they know that children aren't going to be watching, so they can add more swearing or violence and things of that nature. So to have his show on, which was just good, wholesome, entertainment, informational, G-rated and all that, that was really a great thing just for the central Minnesota community in general. And it's unfortunate that they didn't have a national platform, but like I said, anywhere you go, any local community, there are skilled and talented people, whether they're in the position in their lives to utilize that skill and talent. There's a lot of times people a lot of people just want to be honest, hardworking people and raise a family, have a regular job, and then live happily ever after. So I mean, they just don't really have the time to take their talents and use them to build their community, to make their communities great again, to make their Minnesota great again. So I mean, if somebody gets caught up driving forklift overnights or whatever, and they happen to be really skilled at playing tennis. Obviously playing tennis is not something that's going to pay the bills, but it's something they could do for fun. You know, maybe they could run a little tennis school or some intramural tennis and then just get people involved with it, and then people can get exercise, get outside, get involved with their local community and all that good fun stuff. And yeah, people just generally have a good time, an uplifting experience. But I mean, nowadays, I think a lot of people are just having trouble getting by, or people are too blinded by monetary and materialistic gains and everything like that. But you know, it's difficult for me to accurately say how challenging it is to get involved in those the rat race, I guess you could call it. You know, I was always very fortunate to get a few jobs here and there that paid pretty well, and you know, I just didn't like spending money, and I didn't really like making money, so I figured I could just do neither. You know, grow my own food, buy a car with 70 miles per gallon that I've had for the last 10 years, you know, live in some cheap house with very cheap property taxes, no mortgage or nothing like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's all part of the minimalistic lifestyle. And ultimately, I think that's worked out pretty good. But it looks like, I don't know if we're 10 minutes over or if we're, I don't know, the clock seems to be malfunctioning here, so I'm just going to go ahead and assume that we're coming to the end of the show here. And what I want to do is, good times, balls deep. It will be coming in the near future. Still working on the sound editing equipment. But I think, yeah, it should be a great show. I mean, we're probably going to have it planned out, so the show will be on for, yeah, maybe probably plan out the show to run for at least a few months at first, sort of a pilot project, and then determine the direction to go from there. So, I mean, the host of the show, he's got so many brilliant ideas. It's just a matter of probably all of them. If you threw all of them against the wall, they'd probably all stick. So it's just a matter of picking one thing and going with it. It's sort of the old adage, the more options you have, the less happy you're going to be with your result. So, I mean, we might just flip a coin and say, or roll a dice. Say if there's 10 ideas, and you take a 10-sided dice, roll a dice. If idea 5 comes up, then that's the one you run with. See, when you allow fate to make those decisions, because there's no way you can go through the pros and cons of every single decision in your life. You know, if you're gonna say you're not sure whether you should buy organic yogurt or organic potatoes, you know, you got the money to buy one or the other, but not both. So what do? I mean, you can say, all right, well, yogurt has probiotics, it has this calorie, but it does have lactose in it, and if you're lactose intolerant, that's a big issue. And the price per calorie, the potatoes are a little cheaper, plus potatoes have, you know, a lot more potassium, and then they have, you know, turmeric or whatever, and maybe they got more iodine or something along those lines. So yeah, it's basically a wash when it comes to the pros and cons. So you just usually do what I do. Just flip a coin. Heads, potatoes, tails, yogurt. Even some of the show topics of today. It's just, alright, you know, all these topics look pretty good and everything, so I guess just flip a coin and run with wherever the coin may lie. And with good times, balls deep, I mean, we're definitely going to have, that's probably going to be the biggest issue. Just all the good ideas, the great input, and just organizing it into a way that's competent and that we're able to accurately illustrate and narrate to you, the ladies and gentlemen viewing at home. I mean, I'm excited, I'm pumped, I'm exhilarated. You know, it was great to have that Sunday off to finally just relax, reset, and reload into this next week. And ultimately, I'd say the future looks pretty bright. I mean, we may still be in the A line of the sun's, you know, orbit, but the future is looking optimistic, and I'm very happy about it. And yeah, we're going to have setbacks here and there. There's going to be, we might have a few sunken ships or a few train derailments or the ship might hit a lowering drawbridge or whatever, but yeah, it's just that's the penalty of doing something. The more you do in life, the more mistakes you're going to make. Hey, I mean, it's really that simple. The more you drive around, the more danger you put yourself into from getting into an accident, the more heavier weights you lift, the more chance it is of getting hurt or injured or whatever. And yeah, I mean, with good times, balls deep. You know, the more great ideas making America great again, the higher probability something is going to go completely off the rails. But ultimately, that's probably what's going to make the show great. It's what's going to make St. Cloud great again, the community's great again, families great again, friends great again. Yeah, it'll just be a 360 win. So this is Rick Tex checking off. You're listening to Tex Messages. Thank you very much. The second week of our show. It looks like everything is probably hitting on about 4 cylinders now. I haven't really had any misfires yet, so pretty happy about it. Thanks for listening.